Morning. Kids, did you ever get in a fight? It isn't what it used to be. Ethan, have you ever gotten in a fight? Besides with your brothers? No, never. Honor, did you ever get in a fight? Did you ever get in a fight? No. Okay. Well, this is a story about a big fight. And this fellow, if you were going to fight, Honor, would you pick out a big guy to fight? Maybe, who is it? Raymond there, Red. He's about twice as your size. Would you fight Raymond? You would not. Raymond would pick you up and throw you out the front door. Well, this fellow was going to fight. And the question up here is, what was he thinking? It was just crazy to fight that man. The story of David and Goliath. As you think about that, this has just become a figure in our language for fighting a difficult battle, a bigger battle, where we're fighting somebody who's twice our size. We've got to think about that. It's just become a figure of speech. What in the world made this shepherd boy feel that somehow or another he could defeat this giant? Have you thought about it a little bit? His brothers made fun of him. It has to do with why he fought in the first place. The reward seemed worth the fight. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Honor, just to fight Raymond, it's just not worth it. You're going to get all beat up and bloody, and Raymond's just going to run right through you. It's just not worth it. What am I fighting for? There's no good reason. I'm not going to get anything out of it. And so in this passage in 1 Samuel 17, David begins to explain to us why he got in this fight. The men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel." Wow. And David spake to the man that stood by him, saying, "What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him after this manner, saying, "So shall it be done." Man, did you see that? What a deal. It's a tough fight, but, we read about all these prize fighters and these MMA fighters and all those crazy football players. I don't watch football anymore, at least not pro football. I'm done with that. But you got to ask yourself, why are they doing this? You see these guys come out of the ring and they're all bloody and their eyes are closed and their ears are great big and they got knocked out and they got their eyes messed up. Why would you do that? Let me just tell you why. It's for the money. There's a big purse. There's a big payday. It's for the money. And so in this case, they promised him great riches. He could have a princess as a wife. My goodness. You'd be royalty. And a tax break, Leanne. You'd be free. No taxes. What a deal. Man alive. It seemed worth it. You know, have you thought about being a Christian? Shouldn't Christians think heaven is worth the fight? Have you thought about that? If fighting this giant was worth it for money and a woman and a tax break, why wouldn't it be worth it? Heaven be worth whatever you have to sacrifice, however bloodied and bowed you might be, whatever fears you might have. Isn't it worth it? In Hebrews 10 and verse 34, Paul says, "Ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and an enduring substance." It was worth the fight. Well, you know, as you think about that fight, he wasn't depressed by other people's low opinion of him. You know, Honor, I commented that you're just half the size of Raymond. You're just a little kid, right? You're not going to get in a big fight, are you? Raymond's big and tall and strong, and a lot of people, I've seen him wrestle. He's beat at least one or two guys wrestling. Maybe not everybody, but he's beat them. Right, Raymond? So I think he could take care of you, Honor. So, but a lot of people would say bad things about you, Honor. For instance, his brother fussed on him and said, what kind of an ego have you got to come up here fussing at the whole army? The king sort of had a low opinion of him too. He's just a kid. He's going to go out here when I'm afraid to go, and lo and behold, Raymond is making fun of you too. His enemy was making fun of him. He said, what did they send out here? They all looked down on him, disdained him. You know, as you think about, is it worth your effort? Is heaven worth your effort? And everybody in the society begins to make fun of you and say, why in the world would you give up all these sinful pleasures for heaven? Why would you make sacrifices? Why would you do those things? Shouldn't disciples refuse to allow others to pull them down? David didn't. You might notice 1 Corinthians 4, verse 3. With me it is a very small thing that I should be judged of you, or of man's judgment. Yea, I judge not mine own self. For I know nothing by myself, yet am I not hereby justified, but he that judgeth me is the Lord. Therefore judge nothing before the time. You know, Honor, I'm beginning to have confidence in you. You might make it. Until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness, and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of God. You know, Honor, how old are you now? You know you're not always going to be 5. And you know Raymond over here is going to quit growing in a year or 2. And you're going to catch up to him. So all those people who say, oh, you could never wrestle Raymond, they could be wrong. One of these days you can wrestle Raymond and clean his clock, because I've seen other guys do it. What about that? Don't judge anything before the time. Don't make that judgment already. Well, he had confidence based on his past confrontations, based on the fact that he had been able to accomplish it before. In 1 Samuel 17, verse 34, David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. He said, I've fought some hard battles already. thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of Israel. He had confidence because he had fought a few battles before himself. Now, do you suppose that might not be true of us? Fighting with those wild animals helped him. Shouldn't you and I learn from the hard experiences of our lives? Our difficulty with work, our difficulties with the passions that we express, our difficulty with getting our kids raised, difficulty with paying the bills, overcoming those temptations. Shouldn't we have learned from those experiences? In Romans 5, not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, patience experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed. That's what David was saying. He said, I've fought some battles before. I can fight this one. In addition, David understood the need for the familiar. You know, a lot of times, somebody said, well, I can't teach the gospel because I'm not like these preachers. I don't know these big words and I don't know everything in the Bible. Well, David didn't know everything either. David, or if you look with me in 1 Samuel 17, Saul armed David with his armor, put a helmet of brass upon his head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. It'd be like Honor down here trying to put on somebody's armor, somebody else's armor. It's too big for me. I can't wear this. I don't even know how to use it. You know, when my wife and I, on our honeymoon, we were married on Saturday. And the next day, I went out to hear a man preach. He's dead now. But he was a good man. Brooks Webb was his name. He was a terrific fellow. I went to see him one time with my dad, visiting his home. And he had been preaching for years. He had made this church that, by the way, it was in Hamilton, Ohio, and made this church grow and prosper. He had converted scores of people. He raised a good son. His name's Norman. I believe he's preaching down in Florida now. He's a good guy. He had done a lot. I remember, I'm going to tell you a couple stories about him. One, he got up and made announcements one time at a meeting, and he actually said to those folks, he said, a bunch of our people are missing tonight, and I hope they're all sick. Because they missed a good lesson, he said, and there's no other good reason for them not to be here. By George, those people kind of listened to him and he talked. But my dad and I went to visit him one time. We were sitting in his house. And this is sort of preacher inside stuff, but he said, man, he'd been preaching for 30 years, 20, 30 years at the time. And I was just a kid. He said, I've discovered this most wonderful book that has helped me so much in my preaching. Boy, I listened right up. You know what it was? He discovered a concordance. A concordance. Now, that doesn't mean anything to you, but that's probably one of the first books I got when I was a teenager. Now, he had been preaching the gospel for 20 and 30 years successfully. I wouldn't have described him as he didn't have a big library. I saw his library. It was about 6, 7 books and a Bible. And that was enough. Quit using excuses now. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of books. Nothing wrong with studying a lot. Nothing wrong with reading from them. But you don't need all that. You can teach the gospel. You can preach the gospel without it. Just take your Bible with you. Be familiar with that. You don't have to know everything from every commentator, every authority, every concordance, every reference book. You don't have to have that. You just have to have your Bible. This man had it. And I admired him then. I was a little surprised. I admired him then, and I have been still admiring for what he did as a gospel preacher. He understood that need for familiar things. He refuses Saul's armor and just is going to take his staff and his sling, something he knew about. Shouldn't you and I, as pilgrims, travel and live with what we understand? You know, I have heard my mother tell the story about my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. She says he always had more, of course, overalls. He always had one spot right here in his pants. The reason for that is he'd sit out on the stone, read his Bible, with this number on his pants. He wore his pants out right there. And folks, we need to be studying our Bibles more. If you study your Bible and have 1,000 reference books, by the way, I got a computer here with about 1,000 of them in it. That's fine. But you be sure you know that basic book. David knew what he needed. In 2 Corinthians, the 8th chapter, if there be first a willing mind, a desire to learn, a desire to impart the gospel to other people, it's accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to that he hath not. You can't invest $10,000 in a fancy theological library. Okay. Can you buy a Bible? And can you learn what's in it? But let's go on just a little bit further. He trusted in God's power for victory. What are you trusting in? Well, I got a good education. I got a certificate. I've got a diploma. Ryan over here just told me that he's studying for, what was it, a certificate? Certification for something that's going to make him a whole lot of money. He's going to be wealthy. Kids, your allowances should go up. But you know what? Whether he's got that certificate or not, I bet he knows everything that to do that job with or without the certificate. Do you trust God for your success in life, or the fact that you got a diploma or a certificate? Which one is it? He trusted God, not his armor. He trusted God. In 1 Samuel 17, then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with the sword and with the spear and with the shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day into the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. He said, no. He said, it's not going to be me, because I'm just a boy. It's not going to be my armor. It's not going to be my great skill. It's going to be God that gives this victory to us. He trusted in God's power for victory. Goliath had defied God, and God's going to defeat him. It was as simple as that with David. Shouldn't you be trusting in your Father to get you through? You know, there's 2 or 3. I've done it myself, and I've seen 2 or 3 of you do. You get worried. You get worried. I just don't know. You know, maybe you get worried about your job. Get worried about money. Get worried about your marriage. Get worried about how you're going to get by in life. And you just stew over it. Now, after a year or 2, you got through. All right. We're still one of the fattest nations in the country, in the world. We're all eating well. I don't see any starving faces out here. And you're ashamed. Why? I was. I suspect you were too. Because you were just certain that you couldn't do it. And you weren't putting any trust whatsoever in God to get you through. And if you've got any wisdom, you speak a little while with the Lord and beg Him to forgive you. That you didn't trust Him to get you through whatever that crisis was. In 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, when this corruptible shall put on incorruption, this mortal shall put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? Are you afraid of dying? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law, but thanks be to God that giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing, for as much as ye know, that your labor is not in vain. You know, in addition, David knew he had to be decisive. Are you one of those people that kind of tizzes and taints a thing and goes back and forth and considers the pros and cons forever? You just can't make up your mind? You know, when you're out there fighting a guy who's about 3 times your size, who's well armed, and who's about to try to kill you, you got to make up your mind fast. You're either going to fight him or you're going to run. Which one's it going to be? Because you're not going to talk him out of this. You're not going to say, now, Goliath, let's reason a little bit. How about a little diplomacy here? No. You're going to have to make up your mind. You're going to have to be decisive. In 1 Samuel 17:48, it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. He didn't dawdle. He didn't step back. He didn't sit there terrified and wait for Goliath to come up to him. He went after him. What about you? Are you willing to be decisive in the decisions you've got to make in life? Go on and go. Do what you know needs to be done. Shouldn't we look at David running at the enemy on the offensive? Shouldn't we act now, today? There's some of you here who are believers. What are you waiting on? You haven't become a Christian. You haven't been baptized. What are you holding back for? You waiting for somebody to come lead you by the hand? It's time to hasten to do the Lord's will. Act now, today. In 2 Corinthians 6, we then as workers together with him beseech you also that ye receive not the grace of God in vain. For he saith, I have heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation have I succored thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Here it is. Get with it. Quit going back, trying to make up your mind, trying to screw up your courage. Just do it. He was prepared for unpleasantness. For unpleasantness. You know, there's two or three of you fellas that are policemen or about to be policemen. And every now and then I see you stop a car. Once or twice it's been me. But I see you stop a car out on the highway. And you know, you walk up to the car after, I suppose, finding out whether there's an axe murderer in there, has some record based on a driver's license on his car. But I've seen a lot of policemen walking up there with their hand on their gun. Now, they don't know that there's a little old lady who's driving to church in there who wouldn't know what a gun was. But they're ready. And considering the job and the way people are, they're prepared for things being unpleasant. Are you? You know, you became a Christian. Are you prepared for things to be unpleasant in your life? It would be wonderful if we could just scatter rose petals for you all the way. Your marriage is going to be perfect for the next 70 years. It'll be wonderful. Your children will be above average throughout their entire life and always loving, and their marriages will be wonderful. You'll have a great job for a great boss. It'll just be perfect. You know what? More than likely, there's going to be a few bumps in the road. Are you prepared for the unpleasantness? Now, hopefully, you don't have to carry a gun. But are you ready for that? David ran and stood upon the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him. Maybe he wasn't completely dead. Maybe he was just stunned. But when David got done, he was dead. He was plumb dead. And cut off his head therewith. And when Philistines saw, you know, maybe they thought, well, Goliath just slipped out there. He'll get up in a minute. But no. David ran over to him, cut off his head, and held up his head for all of them to see. And then they got a little concerned themselves. When the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Hey, are you prepared for some unpleasantness in life? You may have to do some unpleasant things. It took killing the giant to destroy him. Shouldn't we stand for the truth regardless of what it takes? You know, there may be trouble in your family because of the truth, where you've got to stand for what's right. Your kids, your wife, your husband may go in the wrong direction. And you have to stand for the truth. And you know, in a church, it'd be wonderful to think, oh, these are all Christians. What a wonderful group. There's never going to be any problem here. I haven't seen that church yet. Are you going to prepare for unpleasantness in the church? Well, I'll just move. I'll find one that's always pleasant. You may need to go occasionally and cut off a giant's head and hold it up for everybody to see what the truth looks like. In 2 Timothy 4, preach the word. Be instant in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. You know, that darling little child of yours, he may need some discipline here and there. Now, you may not like disciplining. I sort of enjoyed it a time or two. I'll have to admit, I felt like it's a high time, and I've put up with you long enough. But you may not like that. It may be unpleasant to you. The time will come when they will not endure, Paul says, sound doctrine, but will heap to themselves, after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. They shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables. Watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. Be ready for unpleasantness. Well, this is the one you've been looking for. All of us are going to face a Goliath. Maybe several. Evil opposing God and us. Sometimes it's evil in our own lives that you're going to have to fight with. But if we had the traits that we've seen in David, we can overcome them just as he did. David chose 5 stones. He only needed one. It was well chosen. It was well placed. It was well thrown. He was ready for it. We can carefully deal with evil as long as we're trusting in God's help and know what the book says. Life's victories come from God for those who follow him. The Lord's not going to let evil overcome. If you'll stand with him, you'll fight against his enemies through you. Are you here this morning? It's time to do what David did and hasten to get this job done and serving him. Come while we stand and sing.